than having everybody say something, I'm going to ask some questions, or start with a question, and anybody who wants to comment will have an opportunity. And as folks stop commenting on that question, if we have questions from the audience, I would be happy to entertain them as well. I think Lynn's presentation showed us some things about what a knowledge-based culture would look like, and some of the transformations that would have to occur. Given your knowledge of the upstate of South Carolina, what would some things look like different if we became, what sorts of things that will have to change as we move toward a knowledge-based culture in the upstate of South Carolina? And anybody who wants to take that on is welcome to have a word.
Well, since I have the microphone in my hand, I guess I'll start. I think it's already been touched on. What we realized in Cherokee County was that we needed a mindset change. And like you talked about, the legacy of the textile industry was one that was quite devastating as far as the disappearance of the old style textile industry manufacturing. And we had to take on a different mindset. And I represent an organization called No 2. We're a grassroots nonprofit organization. And the reason for our name is you need to know, every citizen of Cherokee County needs to know two things. The first thing is that I must be highly educated in order to have economic success and high quality of life. And secondly, that education is available to me, my family, and my community. And I'm happy to say that our community has embraced this philosophy to the extent that our county government has even established a scholarship for students who wish to attend our local community college and have exhausted all avenues of scholarship and so forth, grants. And if they cannot get funding elsewhere, then our county government has established a scholarship. We've also developed a lot of relationships with our two universities, or our two colleges in our county, Limestone College and Spartanburg Community College, Cherokee County campus. And so our goal, I guess you could say, our mission is to see that mindset change and value the importance of culture from little children all the way up to moms and dads and grandparents.
My turn? Thank you. I would just add, I think that, if you think about a knowledge culture as the force that drives the infrastructure that supports a knowledge economy, I think what you described makes a lot of sense. And I think I would just add to that I see a lot of great energy in Greenville. I've lived in South Carolina since I was 10 years old. It's the only place I've lived. And I've lived in all the major hotspots, Charleston, Columbia, and Greenville. And the energy up here is different and incredibly progressive. To see that energy, though, spread more regionally across the upstate region is key, I think, to making a knowledge-based culture support us in the development of a knowledge economy. We can't do it here alone. We've got a great start, and there's certainly other real hot spots in the upstate that are at work on this, and I think connecting those dots is an important piece.
Do you want to continue to ask questions? Or
go ahead. Anybody else wants to comment on that question?
I'm Nan Dempsey, and I'm with the Upstate South Carolina STEM Collaborative. And I think collaboration is huge. I think for so long we were so proud of our own little silos, and I think we're going to have to step back from that and become not only leaders, but be able to follow as well and flip back and forth between those roles so that we can learn from one another and with one another.
I'm Fred Cartwright, and I'm the Executive Director here at CUI CAR. I'm still relatively new to the area, so maybe I can shed a little bit of light on from a Detroit perspective, because that's where I'm from. I didn't know that I should refer to it as a knowledge-based economy, because really I came from the automotive industry in Detroit that is very much that. You may not think of Detroit with all the bad publicity has come from Detroit recently, but Detroit represents 80% of all of the research and development that's done in automotive, and hardly any of that is done in South Carolina or in the southern states. So there's definitely a need to move up the value chain and complete or work toward on the development of the automotive sector here in South Carolina and in the South in general. And the establishment of CUI CAR almost 7 years ago now was a step in that direction. It was a step in education in terms of offering an automotive engineering degree, which is the only place you can get such a thing at a master's and PhD degree level. But since I've been here, I've come to realize that this is the most important topic I should be working on, and that all of us should be working on, because the fact is that we educate all of these great minds in automotive. They come from all over the world. 80% of our students are from outside the U.S., and then the majority of them leave. That's the reality of where we are today. In fact, many of them go to Detroit, because that's the center of thought leadership as it relates to automotive. So anytime I get a chance, I talk about this, moving up the value chain in automotive. What can we do together? And I think what I would see is what I saw in my career in Detroit, and that is you live, you breathe, you're constantly inquisitive about all things automotive, everything that's happening in the industry, and people are trained and educated, to help further that industry.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Blant from Tri-County Technical College, and Tri-County is a community college, and we serve the counties of Anderson, Oconee, and Pickens counties. And one thing that we're doing to help create more of a knowledge-based culture, I've heard the words perception and changing the mindset, and we are really working hard with our K-12 partners to do just that, really by getting more information to students and parents about the many ways to be educated now. There's still a perception that the four-year college route is the only way to go and the only way to be successful. And we all know that that's not the case, and it's certainly not the case in the upstate of South Carolina, where industry is demanding students who have many skills that you can get at the two-year degree level, so associate degree level. So we are working hard with our K-12 partners to create career pathways for students so that they can start taking courses in high school as part of a seamless pathway. They can start college courses in high school that lead to an associate degree, move seamlessly into the college, and sometimes even graduate with a certificate from Tri-County before they actually move into the college and continue working on their associate degree. We worked with Crescent High School, a very rural high school in Iowa, South Carolina this past year, and 6 students from Crescent High School graduated from Tri-County 2 weeks ago with a basic electronics certificate, and they have not even graduated from high school yet. And we have employers who are really enthusiastic about these 6 students and want to see, what they will do. All of them are now enrolled at Tri-County in industrial electronics, but these employers want to give them internships. They want to pay them to continue their education at Tri-County. So what we're trying to do is to educate more students and parents about the perceptions and about the many ways that you can get wonderful jobs, and where the jobs are right now that are in demand, especially in automotive. It's not just about engineering and having your PhD, but we also want students to know that with an associate degree, that doesn't end there. We're working on developing pathways that are stackable credentials that show, certificate, diploma, associate degree, bachelor's degree, PhD, and many on and off ramps, so that students can, just because something may come up in their lives, that they have to leave school and work or handle some personal business for a while, that they know that they can always come back and that they've accomplished something, they've achieved something, that they can always come back and work on the next level. And we just feel like students and parents don't know these things, and there's a certain amount of ignorance in South Carolina about the many possibilities that all students can be educated, but it doesn't have to be the traditional way. And so that's what we're working hard on with our partners.
Any comments or questions from the audience on that particular issue? There's one in the back.
You mentioned the scholar technician or technician scholar.
We do have technical scholars. Once they come to Tri-County, we have lots of companies, BMW, Bosch, Michelin, Duke Energy, just to name 4 of the many companies that provide scholarships to our students as technical scholars while they're working on their associate degree, particularly in mechatronics, CNC, industrial electronics. Students can come to the college. A company like Bosch, for example, will pay the tuition for the student, buy the student's books, give the student a job working 15 or 20 hours a week. Then they get a salary on top of that. So students can get their education in these fields for virtually no out-of-pocket expenses if they do it the right way. We're just trying to spread that message, because those opportunities are very wonderful, and we just want people to know about it, so more people will take advantage of that, because there is a demand.
My next question is, what are the non-job related economic activity, particularly job economic activity related aspects of a knowledge-based culture? Other than preparing people for meaningful and productive work, what other characteristics are essential in moving us toward a knowledge-based culture?
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Evans, and President and CEO of the Arts Partnership in the Chapman Cultural Center in Spartanburg. And my head is spinning not only as a leader in the community, but because I have an 11 and a 14-year-old. How many of you have middle school or high school children, or even little ones in the crowd? And so my brain is just spinning about what am I doing as a responsibility as a parent to make sure that just the 2 people that I'm responsible for on the earth are thinking this way. And my husband and I are educated people, and so we have to always think about strategies for folks like myself who are educated and have exposure, but we also think about strategies of generations of people that don't have exposure. And that really is the role, I think, of out of school. So many times we think about the school systems, public education being the sole responsible party for producing the 21st century workforce. And the audience member asked about the arts, and I will tell you that IBM did a study in 2010, a global study where they interviewed over 1,500 CEOs of worldwide companies, and they said that of all the hiring, all the people that they would hire, the #1 leadership trait that they looked for was creativity. And although creativity is found in a lot of forms, the most important conduit for creativity and innovative thinking is arts education. And we do that in our schools in a wonderful way in the Upstate. Most of our counties at 10 of the top really value arts education in our schools, but it's also a responsibility in the after-school programs and the early childhood programs. When you think about brain development from 0 to 3, I think it's at 90% by age 3. So it is so important that outside the public education that we're looking at nonprofits and other systems that are providing this other layer of education, exposure, and experience for our young minds to absorb and be creative and innovative. So that's what we see the role of the arts is helping develop those minds that the CEOs of the next generation will hire. So hope that helps.
I just wanted to add something before we get too far away from the role of education in this knowledge culture. The Riley Institute has been involved in developing, with the Knowledge Works Foundation, a network of new tech high schools in South Carolina. The first 2 just opened last fall in the Low Country, and 2 more will open in the Upstate this fall, and 3 more will open in the fall in the Upstate in the fall of 2015. New Tech designed their New Tech high schools using the best evidence around what prepares kids for success in a knowledge-based economy. Kids who can creatively apply knowledge in ways that add value and drive economic and social progress. They identified the important pieces, and the first, of course, is deep, rich content knowledge. These kids definitely need to understand science and math and English language arts and other really important content areas. And then, of course, they need these 21st century skills that we will spend so much time talking about. They need to be able to think critically and analytically. They need to know how to access information and apply it to a problem. They need to be able to work in teams and to communicate with each other and other people around what they're doing. And New Tech has set up a school environment in which kids work like we work. Their learning process is one that models the way that we work together. It is standards driven, so the content is definitely there. College access focused. Our kids can graduate with 12 hours of college credit from New Tech high schools, and project based in its learning. So to give you an example of how that might work, teachers work in teams to devise cross-curricular projects. And students work in teams, or they devise cross-curricular problems. And students work in teams to solve those. So an example of that might be that the kids are charged with designing a roller coaster in a seismically active area of Japan. So there, if you're looking at the content there, you're dealing obviously with science and math. You're dealing with geology, geography. And they're charged with developing presentations around that. So art pieces come in there in the way of graphic arts and the like. They might write a book about it. They might put together a video around it. So everything is in there. They work like we work. They're working in teams. They access knowledge. They apply knowledge. They solve problems. They collaborate. They communicate. It's incredibly effective. The outcomes, there are about 140 of these high schools nationally. The outcomes very clearly prove their value. Typically, they far exceed the content knowledge that comparison schools gain. And really importantly, they enter college at a high rate and they persist in college at a really high rate. They persist on average 40% higher than the control schools that they're compared with, because they have learned these 21st century schools that are going to push them through college and into success in the workplace. And of course, it's not just college. It's not just 4-year colleges. It's 2-year colleges or the military or certificates or other means for these kids to enter the workforce and the community in meaningful ways.
Unfortunately, many children, when it's time to enter school, are already 1, 2, or possibly 3 years behind where they need to be. And a lot of research shows that they never catch up. And one of the things, among many of the initiatives that we are undertaking in Cherokee County under the No 2 umbrella, is something new called Reach Out and Read. And this is an initiative where we will be working with pediatricians and general practitioners who treat infants and young children. And we will be partnering with them so that the pediatricians and the doctors and the nurses will be giving the mothers books to give to their children, along with instructions on how to communicate with their children, just to talk to them in common everyday language. And that does two things. It builds their verbal skills and begins to instill in them a love for reading, which is a crucial element in success all the way along life's paths. And not long ago, some of my counterparts and I went to Charlotte, and we heard a couple of pediatricians who actually participate in Reach Out and Read, and they had a brand new baby there with its parents. They were Hispanics ethnically, and they wanted to make sure that their child was on the right path, and they were doing all the things they were supposed to do. And so as a part of that brand new baby visit, they were given books to read to the child. And at the next visit, for when the child began to start chattering and making sounds and trying to form words, the first word this child said was not mama, not daddy, it was book. And that's the kind of impact that we want to have in Cherokee County.
Sorry, I'm fighting over the mic. Before we move on from education, I had 2 points, but as to education, I guess I should have done research on this and know more about it, but I don't, about South Carolina scores, how they measure up nationally. But I know about our local scores in Kannapolis, and sometimes it doesn't tell such a great story when you look at the local high schools. And when we're attracting, in my case, I'm trying to attract PhDs, to come work in our university institutes or in industry. They already know before they meet you what your local test scores are. They've been online, they've researched it. They're going to tell you more about the school system than you probably know yourself. And you can't change that overnight, although we're all striving to have better test scores, and we want read competency to be better, and we want to offer great things for students. So some of the things that we've done to try to counteract that, for instance, I mentioned the STEM Academy that our local school system built. They're offering things like Mandarin Chinese. They're working with our Chinese researchers on our campus to set up Chinese American festivals so that they can help these young children who've left their home countries grasp and maintain a little bit of their home culture. They're excited about them coming to America and the opportunities they have here, but they still want them to embrace and understand the culture from which they come. So trying to cross back over and help them make that connection has scored us a lot of points that maybe not having some of the best traditional scores in reading and math, where we've had a little bit of a deficit. So I wanted to say that thing. And then also to say that you also can't discount the importance of your parks and recreation and your opportunities for physical activity and recreation in your community. Companies that are coming into your area, researchers, they're looking at that. We helped, we had a British researcher who was just hell-bent. He wasn't coming unless he could find a place to play soccer. So we organized an adult football club for him in Kannapolis. Found a curling club for a Canadian researcher because she couldn't give that up. She wanted to be able to curl. I don't even know what that is, but I've seen it on TV, but I couldn't tell you how to play it. But we helped her connect with a club in North Charlotte so she and her family could curl. helping organize walking clubs at night for researchers so they can get together. And I think you never also can underestimate how important it is for people to get together in collaborative opportunities that are not their workplace. So finding ways for them to get together, whether it's at a local coffee shop, whether it's in a walking club, whether it's cycling during lunch, whether it's being part of a men's football club, those are all very important, and those are some of the best ways people learn to trust, which I think is a predecessor to collaboration, and you have to have that.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
One thing that you said that really hit with me is that, like, we were talking about education, and you bring up parks and recreation and physical activity. And another thing that was mentioned is how we tend to live in silos. And it's not only do we need to learn to collaborate across education, but we need to learn to collaborate across different agencies. So, a nonprofit that might work in parks and recreation may never talk to someone in education, but why is that? I feel like for us to have a true culture shift, that we have to find ways to creatively collaborate in ways that we may never have thought of before.
You need to join the collaborative.
Another question here.
Yes, my question is this. I think we do a great job of taking care of the 35% of white-collar workers and 35% of those who are educated. And those 35% of those kids that come from educated families, we do a great job with those. How do we bring the other 65% that are coming from blue-collar workers, 50% of those families that are living in poverty or poor, how do we bring them into that 35% and make that pool larger?
Through education. And we need to rethink how we're educating. That is one of the things I was going to share. In the Spartanburg area for the upstate of South Carolina, it was not just Spartanburg County. Last year, the year before, Fluor and Lockheed supported a pilot program where we brought together educator leadership teams from schools. We had 75 participants with engineers from those two companies that came once a month and spent a day with us and worked with these teams, and we had it structured. And they shared with them and worked with these teams about what it looks like in the workforce. What do they need? We, from the STEM centers, and that was a STEM center project, worked then with the teachers to translate that to the classroom level. And it was kind of frightening, as with any pilot program, because we had primary schools, we had middle schools, we had high schools. We had teams that had representatives from every school in their district. Cherokee was one. We had 3 teams from Cherokee with a representative from every school, but they didn't work together on a daily basis. We had all the configurations were very, very different. And it was through that collaboration and talking with one another as a team and talking and learning from other counties in the upstate area, and it was extremely successful. And then they met for 3 days in the summer, and Fluor led that whole summer experience. We're finishing up our 2nd cohort and have plans for a 3rd cohort next year. So there is an interest there. STEM is science, for those of you that don't know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It has become a buzzword, which really scares me. It's about innovation. It's about bringing everybody to the table around problem solving. The arts are very important. You've got to have that creative person on that team. They've got to be able to write copy. They've got to be able to see possibilities. They've got to be able to think in 3D. And it's very, very important. And I don't know that I'm supposed to share this yet, but I will. This summer, one of our schools in Spartanburg area is having a summer program. It's going to be a launch for their teacher training, and it will be like a 3-year thing for them, but they happen to live in a very poor neighborhood. The students are from poverty, Their theme they're going to explore is their project-based learning. It began looking at an urban desert. They live in an urban desert, and that is going to be the basis of their curriculum for 3 years. It's an exciting time. Public schools are trying to address it. Charter schools are trying to address it. Private schools are trying to address it. We need to learn from each other.
And I would say, you know, I heard Jackie talk about these amazing high schools, and you're putting 11 in. And my answer to your question would be, how do we take the systems that are working and take them to scale in this 10-county area and get rid of our county lines and say, how do we take the things that are working and take them to scale? And I try to take one arts program that's in a school and figure out how to take it to scale in Spartanburg County. And I think, how do we take this to scale in the Upstate? And how do we take it to scale all over South Carolina? And we're doing a STEAM Teachers Institute, and 35 teachers from all over the state come to this one institute that we partner with USC Upstate on. And I talked to Tom Peters at the South Carolina Science and Math Coalition from Clemson, and I say, how do we take the STEAM Teachers Institute to scale? And I think all of us need to think about the 100%, the 1 million engines. In Spartanburg County, we have 79 or 49,000 little engines. And how do we collectively take systems that are working, like your beautiful programs? How do we stop saying, why not, why, you know, but why not? Why not take that to scale? And really, I think we just need Mr. Murdoch to move to South Carolina. I mean, $850 million. I mean, we could do a lot with $815 million. I mean,
I have one comment there, and Don's comments about million engines, about the importance of every child in a community, in a culture. And obviously Mr. Murdoch came in with a lot of resources, a lot of money to put into this facility there. As a university administrator, when I first became an administrator years ago, I did a workshop, and the message that came through to me was, you're always going to be in a situation where you don't have the money to do things that you really want to be able to do. But having money doesn't change priorities. Having the money to do it doesn't make it a higher priority. And it's really a condemnation of our culture that those million engines across South Carolina, across the rest of this country, across the world, are not a higher priority in developing the quality of life in our culture. So that's a huge change that we've got to take. It's systemic, it's cultural. For us to become a knowledge-based culture, we've got to change the way we think about who's responsible for each and every child in our culture. Having more money would not change our priorities. Yes?
Having a daughter that's a teacher in one of the high schools here, she will talk to me and she will ask me the question. She says, Dad, how can it be that when 1 in 8 of the kids that I had in my class will tell me, Miss Anderson, this is useless because I can play the system and live better than you do as a college degree teacher? Anybody got any answer for that? Because I've not come up with one.
I would say this, and I'm not sure it directly answers that question, but we have to start where we are. And, you know, we've got a chicken and an egg problem with education and economy and changing communities and changing South Carolina. We've got a chicken and an egg problem. Where do we start? Is it a cause? Is it an outcome? You know, where are we? And we just are where we are. And where we are is a place where there's a ton of kids that need a lot of help. And, you know, they're not going to learn the way we learned. They're, you know, especially if they're disengaged, as so many are. And, you know, the project-based learning is really great for a lot of kids. It's very engaging. It's, you know, I remember when Secretary Riley told us a story about going into his first project-based learning classroom when we were learning about new tech. It was noisy. He almost wanted to leave, he said, but he ended up staying for 2 days. He was so taken by the way these kids were learning. We got to start where we're starting, and one way is to think about these means of engaging these kids around their learning and not sticking them in rows of desks and teaching at them. But I also think that we have to address all the other problems, or some of the other problems, and I think that's where schools, thinking of schools as centers of community, can come into play, where schools can bring online services like medical services and dental services. You can't learn if your teeth hurt. You can't learn if you can't see. It's incredibly important that we think about doing that, and I think there's a lot of pushback sometimes. It's like, well, people ought to take their own kids to, medical facilities and ought to be accessing, those pieces within the family, but it's not happening in a lot of places. And if we want to change where we are in great numbers, then we need to move to models that take care of those 50% of kids who live in the poverty zone in South Carolina. We've got to take direct action.
Let's send the microphone down to the other thing.
I just wanted to make a general comment. Since being here for a little over a year, one thing that I've noticed in the state and in the upstate is an incredible amount of fragmentation and competitiveness, actually across the state in multiple areas. Imagine that. So as it is with any problem, I mean, if this is a priority, and I know it should be a priority, then we all have to come together at various levels of leadership across the government, across industry, academia, and say this is important and put a plan together and execute that plan. I mean, this is not for me, who, I spend my life here at CUI CAR, and we bring students through here, we bring industry through here, and I hear about all of these issues that the state has, but I also see an incredible amount of enthusiasm and spirit in the state. But what I don't see is kind of a rallying point and a rallying cry for bringing people together, and I don't know why that is in the state, but for a state this size, I would think it would be an incredible advantage that we would have over other states and other places, like Michigan, for instance, that has its act together under a governor, Rick Snyder, who's changing the state for education and for economic development, and has every intent of establishing Michigan as a leader in the knowledge-based economy, and he's doing that. So anyway, just my observation.
Just to comment on what you were saying about the 35% that are supposedly taken care of, you're right. Those students will be taken care of because they come from a culture that believes in that and values a knowledge base and education. But Dale Cardell, 30 years ago, talked about the neglected majority, and that's 65% of our school children who are neglected. And I think, that's when he wrote a book on how to prepare students for the mid-level technology careers when technologies were, all the many new jobs were coming as a result of new technologies. And but we still seem to have, that was 30 years ago, we do still seem to have the same problem today. There's still a segment of our student population that's neglected. And I think it has to do with our values and maybe perhaps how our schools are held accountable for certain things. And we need to change that at the top so that and then educate our teachers too, because many of them come from that 35%.
I would like to just say one more thing since I kind of started this ball rolling. I do think what Cherokee County is doing is brilliant in their No 2. It's simple, it speaks to everyone, every child, every parent, whether they can read, they can't read, speak English as their primary language or not, they all can know Take 2. Or No 2. And it's a fabulous starting point. I really applaud that.
And I think she'd like to make some comments.
I think, I hate to monopolize the conversation, but I am just eaten up with this. It is just consuming me night and day, and I'm sure it does all of you as well. What we decided that we had to do in Cherokee County, because we believe it's a mindset problem that is not just the responsibility of the schools. It is the responsibility of the community. And so we developed what we call neighborhood ambassadors. And we've identified people within neighborhoods, subdivisions, at community centers that are people of influence. And we have invested them with, in fact, we're going to be spending quite a bit of money on training them and getting them to understand this whole mindset adoption of the importance of education. And so we're talking about neighborhood ambassadors in white communities, black communities, Hispanic communities. We will be infiltrating these folks all throughout the area as being representatives of the concept of no two.
Time for one last word, I think. We're about out of time. So Jennifer?
Just very quickly, another hat that I wear is I'm chairman of the board of the Spartanburg Academic Movement. And in 2010, Spartanburg County set a goal for itself that by the year 2030 that we would achieve 40% of our population with a college education. And right now we're at 20%. And we are focused on measuring the things that matter. The Spartanburg Academic Movement is a county-wide effort to look at all of the things from starting kindergarten ready to third grade math, third grade reading, eighth grade math, and we're measuring those things and deciding what's working and then trying to look at what we're doing that isn't. And so I think those are things we can all do, is make sure that we're measuring the right things. Because a culture change is changing a way of thinking, and how do you measure those things? But you can certainly measure expectations by communicating what your goals are and having benchmarks for those goals. So it's real important.
I think we're to the end of our time. One of my favorite quotations, I think it's from Peter Drucker. I can't find that attribution, and I'll look for it. Is that culture trumps strategy every time, or culture eats strategies for breakfast. So as we think about changing a culture, we can't simply think in terms of strategies to address certain things. We've got to think about how we fundamentally change the systems that build that culture from the ground up. So I want to thank our panelists. Let's stay.